Good afternoon, everybody, and a warm welcome to the Singapore Sustainability Academy. We're so happy to have you with us here today for a very special event, From Glaciers to Forests, Turning Dreams into Action with Robert and Barney Swan. My name is Marilyn, and I'm from the CDL Sustainability team. For everyone's safety, can we please take note of the fire exits and staircases located on this map and follow the staff's instructions calmly in the event of an emergency. And if this is your first time here at the SSA, a big welcome. The space was designed and built by CDL in 2017 with our 3P partners as Singapore's first major ground-up zero-energy facility dedicated to sustainability, climate action, and social impact. Since then, along with our expanded annex space just across, launched last July, the SSA has hosted more than 1,300 green training programs and events and have engaged over 45,000 participants across sectors. Today's event brings together two world-renowned figures in environmental exploration and action, Robert Swan, OBE, and his son, Barney Swan. From Antarctica's melting glaciers to Australia's Daintree rainforest, the Swans have trekked across some of the Earth's most fragile ecosystems to raise awareness on climate change and to drive meaningful impact. We're also excited to announce the CDL E-Generation Challenge 2025, a platform designed to empower the next generation of climate leaders. If you have a bold idea, this is your chance to pitch your solution and win a place on a once-in-a-lifetime expedition. More details can be found on our website. And alongside Robert and Barney, we'll also hear from local change makers, Stephanie Dickson, founder of the Wedge Asia, and Qing Sheng Ang, award-winning filmmaker and LASALLE lecturer in a dialogue exploring how passion, perseverance, and storytelling can inspire climate action. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming CDL's Chief Sustainability Officer, Ms. Esther An, who is on the inaugural 2023 Time 100 Climate Leaders in Business.
Happy Friday, and thank you so much for cheering for this. And we've been working on this event just actually for the past 2-3 weeks. Normally we prepare an event like months ahead, but Robert was in town earlier in July. He was always generous, always very kind to want to tell his story and inspire more people. We need to break the bubbles, and we want to have more converts to save the world, and we need to move faster. And if I can trace back that, actually I have the honors to actually get to know Robert in 2016. And that was the time that we planned and offer the E-Generation Challenge winner and follow him and the cruise to Antarctic. And then the winners is someone that you're very familiar with, our local champion, Jessica Chiang, and also in Chua. So that was the first. And then the next one was 2019. And we have one of the, Stephanie also, 2019. Both of them are here joining the panel. And with Qing Sheng, who's actually an award-winning filmmaker. And we've been, actually engaging him to do most of our video that from CDL is always his work. So we want to continue the engagement, not a one-time engagement of winner, and we want to continue to work with them. And of course, Stephanie, from Conscious Festivals to now wearing many, many hats. I'll let her talk about it later. And then also, Barney is someone who's really, I almost saw him grow up from a young man to now a very, very independent and champion. And he's going to share his rainforest, project, amazing project, So in 2019, same place here, we actually launched the Saving Glacier Alliance. But unfortunately, 2020, because of COVID, and then we sort of, put it on hold. And I was just talking to Robert, it's about time that we should bring it back. And I have some friends here. We were on the Arctic climate expedition recently. We witnessed how thin the melting pack ice were, and it is really endangering, threatening the survival of like the lovely, animals like polar bears and all. So we'll talk about it, and see whether we can revive this Saving Glacier Alliance. And of course, we have the Youth for Climate Festival. Whenever Robert is in town, we always have his very generous sharing of time, engaging the little kids there, 2022, and also, the second event at Alliance. And can you recognize this cowboy? Yeah, it's Barney in 2019. Talking to young kids at the National Library. We had a treehouse green library at Central Library in Singapore last time, and then before it was renovated, and now we have our EcoTrain, which is just downstairs. For those who are interested, after the whole panel discussion, you are most welcome to join us as well for a tour. And 2022, we have Barney in town, and then with Stephanie, we did a fireside chat as well. So without further ado, I would love to welcome you all back here. We have a lot of conversation. Last night, we have the conversation on heat, health, and harmony with nature. Singapore is getting hotter and hotter, same as the world. Last year, we have 122 additional heat danger dates, and we are going to see temperature going higher and higher and affecting people's physical health and mental wellness as well. So for those who are first time here, this is actually a rent-free space to promote climate action and sustainable development. We're not here to sell any commercial product. If you have any good idea to promote it, please join my team. My team, Marilyn, Rina, and Wendy, they're all at the back. So start any conversation. No ideas are bad ideas. So if you want to save the world together, let's fast forward our action. Yeah, with this, I think I hand it back to Marilyn and start the presentation and to listen to the impressive story of these two guys. Amazing.
Thank you, Esther. It is now my great honor to introduce our first keynote speaker. Robert is a legendary polar explorer, environmentalist, and the first person in history to walk to both North and South Poles. For over 3 decades, Robert has dedicated his life to raising awareness about the urgent threats of climate change. He founded the 2041 Foundation, an organization dedicated to work for the preservation of the Antarctic as the last great wilderness on Earth. His message is clear. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Please join me in welcoming the true climate pioneer, a powerful storyteller, Mr. Robert Swan.
Wonderful. Well, it's great to be here, ladies and gentlemen. Is this working? Yes. Good. Thank you very much for coming. Terrific. All of us are on a journey which we have to succeed on, and that is a journey towards sustainability. And there have been some setbacks of late. We'll go into those later. But it's a journey we must succeed on, because when I go downstairs later to see the young people, let's never forget that we inherit our time here from those young people downstairs, not from our parents. So I'm going to tell you a story very quickly about what's possible to achieve together. This began for me at the age of 11 with a dream. I saw a film about the real explorers who went to the North and South Poles, and I said, right, I'm doing this. Everybody laughed. They said it would never happen. I didn't achieve it. We achieved this. And eventually, after years and years and years of fundraising, we bought a ship. We sail now south past New Zealand. The ocean starts to get a bit rough, and did feel a bit black on that day, I have to say. But where are we heading to? We're heading to the last great wilderness left on Earth, the Antarctic, the only place in the world that we all own. It's a great thing to be able to say in front of you all that our ship now leaves, 5 of us, alone in Antarctica for 1 year. We have no communications, we have no Wi-Fi, we have no mobile phones, none of that existed. Imagine if I said, right, we're going to shut the door here, and you're in this room for a year. with no Netflix, no communications, no Wi-Fi, nothing for 1 year. And in that time, we must reach the South Geographic Pole. Obviously, it's not where people live. We have penguins, we have incredible seals, we have the orca whales. This is just the last true place, the last true wilderness left on Earth. And as you'll hear, we need to look after it. So after lots of preparation, lots of planning, 5 of us, now part company, and 3 of us now must walk to the South Geographic Pole together. We're nervous. No radio, no backup, nothing is with us. So we're going to make a journey where if we make mistakes, we're not going to come home. We have no fancy GPS where you press a button and it tells you where you are. We'll navigate using the sun, a sextant, and this watch. No mistakes, one building, 1,600 kilometers away, the South Pole Station, and we've got to find it. If we miss it, we're going to die. Off we go. There's a bit of slide. Maybe I should press in that direction. Yes. 9 hours a day, 7 days a week, 70 days in a row. Very, very hard physical work. We have to face crevasses, which are very, very dangerous. Could you just move a little, because I don't think this is quite going through. Anyhow, bit of a tricky one. Anyhow, I'll keep going until we get a slide back up. This journey, I'm going to lose off my body in 70 days, 38 kilograms in body weight. And it's an interesting thing in the world when you think that half the world is starving and the rest of us are trying to lose weight. And when you've starved, you never forget what it feels like to not have any food to eat. It's an interesting part of life. And gradually, we close in now on the South Geographic Pole. Rather than being black, it's actually very white. The temperature will fall to minus 50 degrees Celsius. Now, it's so cold, if you breathe in through your mouth, your teeth will crack. The water in your eyes freezes. It's a rough, very dangerous place, but as a team, we held this together as we now close in on the South Geographic Pole. And after 70 long, hard days, we'd achieved this mission. It was a fantastic moment. Everybody said it couldn't be done, a bit like our journey towards sustainability, but together we made this happen. And we stood there very proud of what 3 of us had actually achieved. But something happened to me walking to the South Pole that brought me here. I kind of went to the South Pole for history, went to the South Pole because it went down well with girls at parties when I was 16. But something happened that changed my whole life, and it hurt. My eyes changed colour in 70 days through damage. Our faces blistered out. The skin came away. We didn't know why, but when we got back home, we were told that we'd walked, yes, underneath a hole in the ozone layer. We didn't know it was there. It was discovered while we were walking. And the ultraviolet rays had come through, hit the ice, bounced back and ripped our faces off. Now, in a world, ladies and gentlemen, where often we feel that we cannot make a difference, well, we can. Without an ozone layer, nothing would have grown on Earth. Nothing. It would have been game over for our planet. However, governments got together, signed the Montreal Protocol, and I'm proud to say that the hole in the ozone now is fixing itself. Not very many people know that. So on our journey towards sustainability, just like Esther An, like the whole team, we've got to focus on positive, not negative. And if I went out there onto the streets and said, do you know there's a hole in the ozone layer? People would go, well, what? Is it fixing itself? But if the hole in the ozone layer was getting worse and we were all going to die tomorrow, we'd all know about it. So I think it's terribly important that we celebrate success, not always focus on what's wrong. So after the North Pole, after the South Pole, it was now time to head north. No one in history had ever walked to both poles, and I intended to be that person, holding the dream. What's happening? We're getting there. Holding that dream. And the North Pole is a whole different game. The North Pole is ice on the surface of the ocean. So you're going to start off walking from ice on land, 700 miles, every step into the middle of a frozen sea. And I know that several of the team have been up to the Arctic recently, and they saw no ice. When we're going to now walk 700 miles to the North Pole across a frozen ocean of ice. It's quite a vulnerable feeling, to be honest with you. Very hard physical work. You know there's 6 kilometers of ocean beneath your feet, and every step you're going away from the safety of land. This would be our home, 8 of us from 7 different nations, inside rather a smelly tent in the middle of the Arctic, and we had to learn patience. And it's something I'm still learning. As my son Barney will tell you, I'm not the most patient person. But on an expedition, you have to have patience. Check out Darryl on the right, how much he loved Rupert's music. Well, let's just say not much. But we had to learn patience on this expedition. Here's me coming in washing naked at minus 61 degrees Celsius. So if anybody, unlikely in Singapore, of course, but if anybody ever says to you, I am cold, if they look like this, they are cold, definitely. You've got to wash your skin or you get body sores, which can really pull you back. Now, we're now 642 miles away from land. Remember, we left a long time ago the safety of ice on land. And we're very near the pole. I can feel like the dream is about to come true, but then everything goes wrong. In 3 days, the whole surface of the Arctic starts to move, and then the whole ocean melts beneath our feet, which was something we weren't expecting. This had never happened in the month of April. It's supposed to melt in August. And let me tell you, you can no longer walk to the North Pole in summer because there's no more ice. So if anybody ever says to you, well, I'm not too sure if climate change is happening, send them to me. And I'll say, right, let's go and walk to the North Pole, but we're going to swim. There is no more ice. Now, at this stage, of course, 30-odd years ago, we weren't thinking climate change, global warming, sustainability, ESG. None of those words existed 30 years ago. What we were thinking is, great, we're going to die. And we have to fight through this, no radio communications, fight through this, and eventually, after a huge battle, 56 days on foot, we eventually stand at the North Pole. What a moment. We had done it, not me. I would still probably in London talking about walking to the North and South Poles, knowing me, but we had achieved this. A modest piece of history, each of us very proud, and we flew a flag which I still believe in. Went back home to see my patron. My patron for all of this was the great Jacques Cousteau from France. And Jacques Cousteau did something, I promise you, that all of you can do, and it doesn't cost you any money. Give other people credibility. Jacques Cousteau gave me the credibility to make these journeys happen. It's very, very good. It's an excellent thing to give other people credibility. But of course, being Jacques Cousteau, he said, and by the way, Robert from France, of course, he said, please make sure you leave Antarctica clean and tidy and help preserve the last great wilderness left on Earth. And he said, and by the way, what are you doing for the next 50 years, young man? And I said, well, tell me. And he gave us, all of us in this room, 34 years ago, a 50-year mission. that in the year 2041, the agreements that make sure all of us own Antarctica, each of you are responsible for a piece of Antarctica the size of a football pitch. All of us on Earth, all 8 billion of us, have a piece of Antarctica about the size of a football pitch. It's ours. And in 2041, the world could be stupid enough to start the end of the last great wilderness left on Earth. And I think we should leave it alone. So, for the last 34 years, we've been trying our very, very best to preserve Antarctica. Every year we go south, we take fantastic people, many are here today, not just to create champions for Antarctica, but to give people a great story that they can go home and actually make what they're doing happen better in their lives with their mission, etc. And ladies, I'm proud of this. I've involved over 85 women from the Middle East on our expeditions to Antarctica. Often representing, you'll be glad to hear, ladies, often representing their nation for the first time in Antarctica beyond any man, which I quite like the idea of that. And we've obviously involved other nations like India, very important country. I'm just back from India. I went to go and make in between seeing you, Esther An, I went to go and make a film on human-wildlife conflict. It was pretty hot for a polar explorer on the Nepal-Indian border. We've involved a lot of people from India, a lot of people from China, important country, and of course, if the pictures are going to happen, some fantastic people from Singapore. There we go, on target, like it. Anyhow, it's fine, we'll just keep going. And you probably understand now why Robert Swan became the first person in history to walk to both poles, because I don't bloody give up. We just keep going, right? So, with all these people going to Antarctica, they've come back, they've done fantastic work, inspiring people, helping people like you with their mission, with your mission and everything else. And Barney, my son, who you'll hear from in a second, he enters now the story. And he said to me about 6 years ago, Dad, young people are really cross with your generation, Dad. Not Grandma's generation who died last year at 106. No, your generation, Dad, because you've known what you've been doing and not done enough. And he said to me, however, it's important that we are positive for young people because people are wrapped up in the negativity of the whole thing. And no one gets anywhere by being negative. We've involved a lot of fantastic women in Antarctica. What we see there is very dangerous. And that is a real sense of urgency to this story. What Barney and I see at the poles is ice. And if you put a block of ice in this room here at 0 degrees, it's here forever. Plus half, it melts. So these places that we go to, whether it's the north or south, are telling us that climate change is a reality. And if you melted the Antarctic continent, you'd be swimming here, right where we're sitting now, even at this level in this building. And no matter how many walls you build around Singapore, it would be swimming time. So we need to think about these things. And Barney said to me, with all this ice, and by the way, that's one area of Antarctica that recently split off, and there's the size of Singapore in comparison with all of the ice that's piling off the Antarctic. And it may not matter to us, we can build more walls in wealthy countries, but in places that can't build walls, people have to move house already. And I think it's terribly important that all of us have some accountability. I see in this world a terrible thirst for data. People going, whether that's social media, whether it's AI, whether it be cryptocurrency. What I think people tend to forget is that all of that requires energy, a lot of energy. In our world, every day there's a data center opened, every day. And all of that requires energy, and most of it still coming from fossil fuels. So are we just going to be going and forget that our actions can affect people that have never heard of AI, who've never had a social media account? We need to think, and at the very worst, at least plant a tree with Barney, or make sure that your data center is running as much as it can on renewable energy. Barney, as I said, Dad, we need to have some inspiring things. I wasn't expecting this, but we made a decision that we'd walk to the South Pole together. First ever expedition to any pole surviving only on renewable energy. It's very easy, present company accepted, I might say, that it's very easy to say we need to change, but then actually not really change in how we live our lives. But sometimes change does require change. So Barney and I threw away our very valuable, fantastic jet aviation fuel and would survive only on renewable energy. Using NASA technology, off we went to the pole. This was fantastic. Father and son working together, generations joining together. It all sounded good. But after 3 days, my hip decided it had had enough. So my hip started to disintegrate as I was walking. It was very painful. And I fall behind, which is like a nightmare. And after 300 miles, I have to fail. And trust me, there's nothing ever in my life that I have not failed at. Everything I've failed at. But I'd always got to the pole when I said I was going to get there. Left Barney to carry on with 2 companions. He did. His toe dropped off, a bit of a hectic time. But he reached the pole. And again, that idea of passing the baton, empowering other people, giving people a great story is really what we're all about. And Barney, as he'll tell you, is doing some great work in the far north Queensland, in the rainforest. However, I was not going to look at a map of Antarctica and think there were 300 miles to go to have crossed the Antarctic landmass. One thing I'd forgotten is that I was getting a bit old to do this stuff. So I had a new hip put back in, and after some major setbacks, Barney and I went at the beginning of 2023 to finish the journey to the South Pole. We said we were going to do it, and we would do it. And this was an incredible journey, again, desperate place, very hard. We had, even at the South Pole, wait for it, climate change that we'd never experienced. We had the coldest day we've ever had, and 10 days later, the warmest day we'd ever had at the South Pole. Even there, at an average temperature of minus 56 Celsius, you see change. And without embarrassing Barney, I shouldn't have been there at 67 years of age. It wasn't the best idea. And I fell to bits, and Barney stepped forward to help his annoying father get to the pole. It's hard enough walking to the pole on your own without having to help your father get there, but we got there. And it was a fantastic moment, and I'd crossed the whole of the Antarctic landmass on foot, and if one's trying to preserve a continent, it's not a bad idea to have really engaged with it. Finally, we've got 16 years to go until 2041. Not that long. Imagine having worked on it for 34 years. And sadly, and I always admit mistakes, sadly, very few people in this room know what 2041 is. So we've got our work cut out a bit, but we're not going to stand back. So we have a fantastic education program that's free for 5 to 11-year-olds. It's really good. 2041 school. And at the end of December this year, I'm going back. I'm not allowed to walk, otherwise Barney won't talk to me. Going back to our ice station in Union Glacier in Antarctica, and we're going to communicate using Starlink out to as many young people as we possibly can. The end of 26, we're taking our ship back to Antarctica. Hopefully some people here might join us, please. And I hand over now to my son, Barney. Good luck yourself, mate. Do you want a clock?
That's okay. Quite surreal to be watching Dad yet again, and the story is always different. And thank you for everything that you've just described to everyone in this room. And I turned 31 at the start of last month, and it's been quite a journey to being able to see Dad and I change both as individuals and a team, and so proud of everything that we've done as a team. And just to finish off on Antarctica, one thing that is pretty remarkable is Antarctica is 19,000 times the size of Singapore. 19,000 times the size of Singapore. It's 14 million square kilometers. We're sitting in a country that's 740 square kilometers. So pretty remarkable to think of that. And there's areas of ice down there that are 5 kilometers deep, 4,700 meters deep of solid ice. Pretty remarkable to think about, and an incredibly powerful place. And much like Antarctica, our international waters, which are 43% of our planet, I'm working between 2 World Heritage Zones. The world's oldest rainforest, 180 million-year-old ecosystem. To put that into perspective, the Amazon's 55 million years old, the Congo's 17 million years old. So an incredibly ancient ecosystem. And on the other side, we've got, now I've got the reality, the Great Barrier Reef. The world's largest reef system, 2,000 kilometers worth of reef, and that beautiful riparian zone in between them, the mangroves, the seagrass, the rivers. This is an incredibly significant biodiverse hotspot. And I was raised there, moved from Australia to Australia when I was 6 from London. So this has been my home since I've been a little one. And I always find it fascinating that despite being the 11th richest nation in the world, there's only 24 million people in this country. It's a very important nation, and when we talk about APAC as an economic trading area, I'm very excited to see, not only from an agricultural perspective, but energy and many other cross-national issues that Australia, Southeast Asia, Singapore, we can work better together. So really delighted to be sitting here, sharing this story of this ancient place, and pretty remarkable that the First Nations people of Australia have been calling that place home for 60 to 80,000 years. Pretty remarkable. Our local tribe, the Eastern Kugialangi people, have been calling it home for around 20, 25,000 years. So ancient culture, ancient association with the plants, the area, and this is the primitive flowering capital of the world. So many evolutionary traits come back to this remarkable spot. And I was raised there as a kid. Didn't have to wear shoes, but I got a detention if I didn't wear a hat, which I always find quite amusing, and had the opportunity to be study and to work in the United States, and came back to Australia with this huge responsibility to do more in the place that I was raised. And some of those facts I just mentioned about Australia, I didn't really fully understand the significance of that place until I returned. And I was raised just down in that area of the jungle, and this cleared scar of a property has always been at the top of my mind, being raised. And it was cleared in the 50s for cattle, timber, and was an organic banana farm. And the passion, the inspiration was to use this remarkable spot between the world's oldest rainforest, one of the most diverse mangrove ecosystems in the world, and the largest World Heritage Reef in the world, and to use this as a blueprint to replicate, not necessarily scale. I encourage the word replicate. How do we get quality over quantity, I think is really important. So that all sounded great, but actually achieving that was incredibly difficult because we're an off-grid farm, so we don't have power, we don't have water, we don't have waste pickup, we don't have anything. And so when we're building a model that can be replicated, it's critical that livelihood, green infrastructure, and indeed biological assets all harmonize in a working model. Because if we only focus on the biological assets, often carbon is obviously the big momentum right now, we often forget that without livelihood and green infrastructure, you can't achieve outcomes. So on our farm, we've got all of these things working in place. You remove any single one of these from our system, we've got problems. So to make sure that we have all of these is a major learning experience. If I could have watched this slideshow that I'm about to present 6 years ago when we started this project, I would have saved a lot of money, a lot of headaches, and so that's really the intention. How can we do that across the board? Accelerate and make sure, much like the slideshow issues that we've just had, I'm not going to be having those issues because we've just resolved them. How do we do that across the board with 8 billion people all wanting the iPhone X15, whatever we're up to now, or wanting to come into an air-conditioned place like this? To achieve that, we need to understand these basics. And the farm, I'm sure some of you have seen Breaking Bad, the TV series. It was like Breaking Bad in the rainforest. This was a dilapidated, druggy, horrible place when we started managing this. And to clean up actual filth, the cows were running through here, no power, no water, cleaning up almost 300 tons of rubbish to date. I hurt my back doing that. And putting up barbed wire fences. I'm sure many of us, and I'm not condoning it, eat beef, but I'm sure far less of us have put up a barbed wire fence. And to understand, when we started managing this property, it was going to becoming an intensive cattle ranch. And so as a result, you just saw the image with the cow manure inside the shed. So we had to fight off the cows, put up barbed wire fences. And I'm sure some of us are in technology here, and we often talk about founders taking that leap of faith. I put my savings into rocks on a property that we didn't own. People thought I was completely insane. Each of those piles of rocks is 10 cubic meters, around $1,400 each. Without those rocks, it wasn't possible. So to take those leaps of faith in business, in entrepreneurship, within relationships, critical. Ripping out the bore pump, putting a solar bore pump in, converting a dirty diesel generator setup, reliable but dirty, into a 100% off-grid, renewably powered energy system. And I think it's really important when we come discussing some of these issues, when we go to the World Economic Forum, COP, UNGA in New York, often people are talking about gigatons of carbon, gigaliters of water, all of these very big macro terms, gigawatts of energy, whatever it is. But do you know what a single kilowatt is? Do you know the life cycle of a single liter of water? Do you even understand the difference between carbon and CO2? We have a tendency to go big, but if we don't understand the basic units, we're not going to be able to transition on a local level and actually really making it relatable within that transition. So those were some of our infrastructure realities, obviously many, many of them. And to run a farm, I thought I knew what that would take. And now 6 years later, it's a very different story. And to start with a dilapidated nursery, that's our HR manager, Tigger, has a lot of inquiry from our 6 full-time employees and 500 volunteers to date, which is exciting. To go from this, now we have 100,000 tree capacity per year, and 190 native species and over 55 exotic species represented within our biological portfolio. So we've come a long way, and the reality is some people see this and it's like, no till, you can't be doing that to the soil. Well, it was a banana farm and there were 6 meter wide rows, and we needed to till the soil to make it flat, and we're certified organic, which is in the tropics, is an exceptionally difficult thing, not to use a synthetic herbicide to take down the weeds. And so we only cultivated once, but that's a 180 horsepower tractor that we had to rent. And, that's a $300,000 bit of machinery there. And so to understand that it all sounds good, but the reality is sometimes you've got to break a few eggs to make your omelet. And it's been a huge learning and really humbling to reduce that hypocrisy. Working on a farm, you have to reduce that hypocrisy. And that was our first plant out. Every single one of us had COVID, which was a reminder of the times, 2022, I think that was. And since then, we've done 4 plant outs. Our last one was last month. So we've come a long way and learned how to do it better, more efficiently, and cheaper. And I think the economics of everything that we're talking about here, how do we, again, make the mistakes so that the next time we do it, it's 70% cheaper and far more efficient, and ideally far more low harm. And we've had over 500 volunteers, as I mentioned, and you definitely wouldn't have a pregnant mama on her third trimester on a synthetically managed farm, where sometimes you have to have a withholding period of up to 2 weeks after you spray some of these chemicals. And to clarify, just because we're organic doesn't mean we don't use chemicals. It's just derived from nature instead of synthetically created. So very proud of the crowd that we've attracted and sustained, and very grateful for some of our team, especially Jack and Liana, who've been there since the very, very early days. And so I think one of the things that's really setting us apart, and a big part of how do we, again, consolidate all of these learnings and create toolkits from them, and the likes of ChatGPT, Cursor, the amazing progression with technology to build from the ground up is a very unique thing. And to understand that soil, water, seed to canopy journey, carbon markets, all of these things have a big part to play when it comes about that validity and trust behind your data. And so super proud that whether it's camera traps, that monitor the beautiful cassowaries. These are ancient alien birds that are about that big. When I was a kid that big, I got chased by one of them, which was pretty terrifying. Got driven up a tree and had to be up there for an hour and a half until it forgot why it was under the tree. And they've got a very scary noise. If you're in the jungle and you hear, you move quickly, because that means they're not happy that you're around their chicks. And yeah, amazing insect life. We've got the world's biggest cockroach. And not your city cockroach, beautiful, big, burrowing, amazing insect life. And that reaction is why we have synthetic insecticides globally, because bugs equal a pain in the backside in a lot of people's. But without pollinators, we don't have many agricultural outcomes. So how do we work with insects and many of the other biosecurity risks? There's a lot of native insect life, a lot of native mammal life, but unfortunately they're not all as cool as the many, many diverse local natives that we have. And we actually have glow-in-the-dark mushrooms here in Singapore, in Bukit Timah. If you go at night, you can find these same phosphorescent glow-in-the-dark mushrooms here in this beautiful country, and the same, we have those in our beautiful area. And it's so easy to look at these cute, fluffy animals, but without the little guys, whether it's the krill in the forest, krill in the ocean, whether it's the mushroom systems in the soil, it's the little things that we need as a species, all 8.1 billion of us, to better look after. Because if the little guys go, the little girls, the beautiful big mammals and all of the things that we love, like the polar bears, they're not going to have food. So really, really important when we talk about biodiversity, let's focus more on the little stuff. And a big part of our research has been drone mapping. So outside of understanding the return of insect life, mushroom life, mammal life, we've been using these state-of-the-art photogrammetry and LiDAR drones to make sure that we understand the baseline, not only from a carbon perspective, but when it comes back to that data, how efficiently and quickly can we actually restore this place. And LiDAR is amazing. Traditionally, people were using tape measures around the base of a tree. It was maybe 60, 70% accurate. With these state-of-the-art scans, you're getting 99.9% accuracy within your above-ground biomass. So remarkable technology. And we're really, really proud that each of our trees we unit base. So I'm sure many of you hopefully have supported tree planting throughout your lives, potentially planted some trees. Not many people are stupid enough to unit base their trees. So we understand when we plant them, what the species is, and if it dies, we have that transparency that we replace it within the first year of growth. Within the colors, that's represented. Green means it's planted once, it's okay. The orange means it's being replaced within the first year of growth, and then the brown color means it's perished and it will remain so, because that's the reality of managing a forest. You need the pioneer species to come up, and then bigger mature phasing species come under those pioneers, and we have trees that can live to 1,500 years old. Pretty remarkable, 1,500-year-old trees. So very proud of how the integrity and the manual components of what we've done here, but increasingly with technology, we won't need to be doing that. But it requires some slightly insane people to do it manually to begin with, and then automation and that replicability can make it easier for the next people who want to do it like this. They can use the crown features of the trees and make it all automated. So to understand that seed to canopy journey from a seed where we're collecting it and until potentially that 1,500-year-old tree, tracking that journey. Up here is the weed management data. As you can see, we did it very, very manually to begin with, and then increasingly doing it more mechanized. And so to understand both the high labor way of doing things and indeed the mechanical way of doing things has been a fascinating journey, and really proud to be making sure that each of these individual trees has that part to play. Often when it comes to carbon, it's on a per hectare basis, instead of understanding that we've planted 90 different species and all of those have a part to play, not only from a healthy ecosystem perspective, but also from an economics perspective. There's many harvestable things, both culturally and from a food perspective. Native trees don't always just mean that they have to be left. Things like Burdekin plum, Davison plum, noni fruit, you can eat all of these things. So it's been fascinating to better understand that. And again, coming back to the people, we've been working with our local indigenous and building up that trust to make sure that they feel safe, that they can share some of these secrets of the trees, because often they're getting extracted upon, and really, really proud that we built and bridged that trust, which has taken a long time. I was raised there, as I mentioned, so very, very proud of that. And when it comes to the people component of what we're doing, it really is everything. And so such a delight to see so many familiar faces in this room, and especially some fired up ladies, and working in a multi different sectors, and fundamentally people are people. Dad and I had unfortunately someone who passed a few years ago, Bryce Courtney, you might know him, a famous author. He was married to my godmother, and he was always, doesn't matter the story, people want to know about people, and the frogs, the polar bears, the mushrooms, the green infrastructure, it needs to come back to that people lens. And from a fundraising and from a trust perspective, I think, as Dad said, we're addicted to this data, let's dictate and ChatGPT, and I love it, and Dad gets frustrated with me using AI sometimes. But if it doesn't have that relevance, that relatability, that human story to it, I think that data for the sake of data can be slightly redundant. And so when it's mental health, ancestry, community outreach, healthcare, diversity, inclusion, sourcing, family, intergenerational connection, not only from a farm research station perspective, but how we're drawing in philanthropy and increasingly looking for investment. I think that this part of the system, the livelihood, the people, is incredibly important. And so proud of, this is some of our team, again, HR officer causing trouble, just so proud of building that community, because that's the hardest thing coming up to 6 years. How do you sustain people being engaged, and that they don't drift off, and they don't feel that they feel worthy, and they feel excited to be a part of what we're doing? And so proud again to be working authentically with our First Nation custodians. Australia has an interesting setup that they have, each language group has an Aboriginal corporation, and there's a big push nationally to make sure that the Indigenous stay on country, and that they're leaders when it comes to not only some of the green economy incentives that I'm talking about, but they make sure that their businesses and their livelihoods stay on country, and they don't need to go to big cities to earn a livelihood. So very proud to be Australian, and that Australia is doing a fantastic job with reconciliation, and the reality that we have caused a little bit of a kerfuffle over these last 400 years with colonization, and happy 60th anniversary for independence, by the way. And really proud that we're engaged. Out of our 500 volunteers, I would say just under 200 of them have been under 18. And so we've had 2 lots of gap year students. We recently just hosted 4 Singapore students, and one of them has been in Scouts for the last 6 years, and she'd never taken off her shoes for more than a couple of minutes. and actually properly engaged with the earth. And that was shocking. As you saw, I was running around at school with no shoes on. And so to understand that different perspective coming from a densely, Singapore, where I'm sure wearing shoes in the Marina Bay Sands would cause a little bit of a ruckus. And so just to build that trust, that connectivity with some of the issues and opportunities that I've been sharing, whether that's renewable energy, livelihood engagement, and research, so many different parts. It's been very inspiring for me personally to see what we've done through young people's eyes. It keeps me motivated. That's another one of the gap year students recently. And to actually have them sit around with elders. And I know mental health is somewhat of a contentious issue in Singapore, especially in the corporate world. And to have an elder there, Richard, who Dad's met, to have him talking about very hardcore stories of him being forced to go and cut down birthing trees that had been in his family for 60, 70, and 80 generations by his parents being forced to do that. And for him to be comfortable to share that grief with these 4 Singapore students recently was exceptionally inspiring, because it allowed them to all open up like, oh, I've actually got a bit of anxiety. Oh, I actually don't know what I want to do when I'm grown up. I actually, struggle with an eating disorder or whatever it is. Being vulnerable, being real, not using acronyms, and actually relating on a human perspective allow us to all grow and fundamentally to feel safe. And that's one thing I'm incredibly proud of, is that this is a safe place. As you saw at the beginning of this story, it was Breaking Bad in the tropics, and the vibe, I hate to use the word, I can't think of anything else, the vibe of the place felt like death. It felt extracted upon, it felt yucky, and it had rubbish everywhere. And so to go from that death feeling to now slowly regenerating, that's not just a biological response, that's a cultural response. So it's been amazing to see that transition, and to build, again, that trust up with a culture where these cave paintings were made 5, 10, 15,000 years ago. And so to have that trust with Indigenous is incredibly difficult. There's 425 million Indigenous people around the world. There's around 7,000 language groups globally, and 4,500 of them are Indigenous. So if we're talking about biodiversity, if we're talking about regreening the world and don't have an Indigenous perspective within it, I think that there's a bit of a disconnect there. So really proud to have been doing that, and an amazing moment. Bennett, John, and Dad all planted a red cedar, which was one of those birthing trees, the birthing tree for our region, right near our front gate. And they were all planted at the same time, and yet somehow they've grown in a staggered sense. And proudly, every time I drive into the farm, those red cedars are there, and it makes me think of John, Bennett, and Dad planting those trees. So a beautiful response to an incredibly sad reality of a 1,000-year-old tree being felled for Victorian furniture back at the turn of last century. So, and telling that story, the tyranny of distance, 2 ways that we've achieved bridging that are the geotag trees, the data, and working with virtual reality. It's fascinating to be able to take people on that journey. I was at the World Economic Forum in January this year, and this is head of sustainability for H&M Fashion, and she's looking at a rainforest canopy in the top of the Alps. What a beautiful story. And she's working in cotton and regenerative agriculture, and to have that connection is really critical. From that comes trust, relevance, and authentic connection. And I think the big understanding that I've realized, especially recently with what's happening in the United States and somewhat of a withdrawal from words like ESG, climate action, sustainability, is that when it comes to managing land, it can't all just go back to native trees. We need food, we need forestry, and we also need livestock to be harmonizing with biodiversity and nature, because there's been a masculine tendency to extract, use synthetic chemicals, kill everything else, get what you need, and carry on. If we continue in that way, managing land, we're going to have a world of trouble. And some places like Central Africa, the soil isn't great to begin with. You use urea and intensive fertilizers for another 10 years. There's going to be a lot of a lot of issues. So I think that the big opportunity now is the story that I've shared, the biodiversity, understanding that how do we harmonize with these primary industries, because in Australia, natural capital, planting native forests is considered a kind of feel-good carbon thing. It's not considered a primary industry, and as you can see from this story, hopefully you understand it, this has been an industrial effort to get this far. And looking ahead, where we're sitting, there's 3.5 billion people in this satellite image. And again, so proud to know, Christina, Esther, Steph, I can see Fee back there. There's amazing, powerful, powerful, powerful men and women in this audience. But Singapore is the nexus, in my mind, of Southeast Asia. How policymakers, market adopters use Singapore to springboard to make impact in Indonesia, Cambodia, Philippines, Thailand, wherever it is, you are sitting in an incredibly significant country. And I just encourage all of you living here to feel incredibly inspired by the power that comes from that and the opportunity that comes from engaging in this market, because it isn't just Singapore. You are the financial hub. I know Hong Kong, Shanghai, Tokyo, in an APAC sense, have their huge cornerstone to it. But from my understanding, this is the spot to be when it comes to green transitions and this beautiful space that we're in, the cross-laminate timber out there, the recycled plastic in the all of the green walls. Esther has been such a huge walking of the talk, because it's very easy to do a lot of acronyms, do a lot of speech, and so proud with not only those names that I've just mentioned, but so many people that I know in Singapore to be taking this incredibly seriously. So very, very delighted to be here sharing this story. And I think as we progress, how we can make this into a living console to make that bridge to not only our regional opportunities, which is sugarcane failing, and what do we do with all of these old mine sites? There's 55,000 abandoned mine sites throughout Australia. How do we replenish those? How do we make that not just a charity feel-good thing, but an actual major equity opportunity? Because right now they're just sitting out there. They're a dead asset, they're a stranded asset, and there's huge opportunity to be working with some of these hard-hitting sectors. Defence is the biggest landholder in Australia. I only found that out a month and a half ago. 9.5 million acres they own and manage. They have a bit of cattle on some areas. Some of these things that I've discussed on this major opportunity. And I really encourage us breaking out of our silos and talking to that conservative person, talking to that person who isn't sitting in this audience and frankly couldn't give a hoot talking about all of this stuff. But if we can show that business opportunity and show that there's hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars wanting to enter this space, they'll listen. So in a small way, I think what we're doing here, I'm certain, is an example of blended finance and family. Steph's got a beautiful mum and dad here. I'm sitting here with my dad. How families, countries, and that intergenerational effort to listen to each other, listen to the different perspectives, and how we can really crack on and make this a hopeful, trustworthy story. Because without that trust, without dissolving hypocrisy, I have a fear that we're just going to keep going around in this same rhetoric instead of unlocking a multi-century opportunity which lays ahead of us. Is how do we clean up our mess and clean up our rooms a little bit as a species. Not a little bit, but just hugely, hugely grateful to be here and really encourage that power and you to all feel that power being in such a significant country as Singapore. And thank you for having us, Esther, and I'm sure we're going to have some questions later on, but delight to share some images and a bit of the story today. So thank you.
Thank you, Barney and Robert, for sharing your inspiring stories. Now for the next part of our program, the dialogue. Can we please invite you back to the front and take your seats according to the pictures on the board? And can I invite Stephanie Dickson, founder of the Wedge Asia, as well as Qing Sheng, filmmaker and lecturer at LASALLE, as well as our moderator for the session, Miss Esther An. Thank you.
Hello, hi everyone. We're a little bit tight on time, so we'll make it really short and sharp and keep some time for you all to ask questions, so prepare, okay? So now, really appreciate the sharing, and this is actually the 4th or 5th time I heard, Robert's story, but every time, it gave me that fire again, that we really need to do something about it. But what actually touched me, moved me most this time is like seeing the father and son hugging there. I was like, wow, okay. Yeah, so I think it was really good. Just a quick question, okay? The Antarctic Treaty has been one of the most successful treaties that keeping Antarctic just mainly for research, scientific research and climate research. And it's been doing really well, but what it is worrying is after the end of treaty, what will happen? So maybe this is your pet subject, yeah.
Well, I think we've got 16 years. And I think what matters is that people know what might happen. And very sadly, probably the biggest hit I've had, Esther An, in 34 years is the withdrawal of a lot of finance from the United States of America for science in Antarctica. What that does is to send a message out to other nations to say, well, if they don't care, should we? So really, what is a problem with Antarctica is that the treaty doesn't have teeth. It's just an agreement. So I'm hopeful, just like Jacques Cousteau in 1991, we can step up and get world leaders behind saying, let's preserve Antarctica. I think, sadly, that the best we can hope for is another 50 years of saying hands off. If it happens, it will be a gradual decline. People will say, well, we're going to do some scientific oil drilling, or we're going to do this and that, and gradually it will become something where exploitation happens more and more. Hopefully Antarctica, because it's a hard place to go to, will protect itself quite well on its own. But fingers crossed.
Great, but Antarctic is actually warming 2 to 5 times more faster than the rest of the world, and we'll see. And hopefully, more parties will be taking the lead and driving action to protect it. And similarly, forest. Yeah, and I read different article that some say 5 million hectares a year that we are losing forests. Some say 10 million, but whatever it is, we are losing a lot of forests. So is this what drove you to actually start this Daintree Forest project? And how far are you from your, completion timeline that you target?
Well, I think the standing forest issue of forests being continually degraded upon is a reality, but there's billions of acres of land that is fallow, unproductive, and not being utilized. So I think one of the big things that got me interested is seeing rampant deforestation. One of the more hard things to see is a forest that was bulldozed and then just left. Not making use, not bringing value to land, that is distressing. And I think being a consultant before starting ClimateForce, there's a lot of talk and not enough data integrity. So that blend of optimizing, creating value in both a traditional sense and unlocking different biological and cultural derivatives, and also just the reality that there wasn't enough trust in this space when we started this in 2019. I think we're slowly picking it up, but those were the two big main contributing factors.
Okay, actually in the tropics where we all live in here, we have a lot of, we're blessed with, very rich biodiversity and forests, but we are also losing forests very, very fast. And I want to hear from our Singapore-based champions, and what do you all feel about it? And Steph, I know you for a long time, and you started really, really young. And Conscious Festival, I think some of you have visited before, very successful. And now she's into another phase now, doing a lot of things. Maybe you can update us as a champion in Singapore. We are really, really lucky to have you to drive change among, different generation. Yeah, over to you to share your latest,
Thank you, Esther. You always make me feel like very intimidated listening. So thank you for all your kind compliments. So yes, for those that I haven't met or haven't seen before, my name's Steph. I ran Green is the New Black and the Conscious Festival for a decade in Singapore. At the time when I started in 2015, everyone kind of laughed at me and thought I was crazy, that I was going to become a plant-based vegan, hemp-wearing vegan, and there was so many connotations we had to break through back then. And so I recently exited. I sold my company recently, and the reason that change came about is I felt, a bit of misalignment with the work I was doing. And I didn't like the fact that we were doing these major events for like 5,000 people, but I had no idea what impact we were making. And I was burning out after every festival, which, maybe some of you can relate to that. And I just realized, okay, I'm not aligned anymore. I have to figure out a better way. So very grateful that we were able to sell and that now it's got new life and new people breathing into it. And so what I've really now focused my attention on is consulting very large-scale events to really look at two main things: behavioral change, but also systems change. Because yes, we can change behavior, but if the system isn't also changing, how much impact are we really making? And so this is now what I'm working on now. I just worked on a major music festival here, 20,000 people a day. Helped to the team with change management, a whole team of boomers, didn't get why we had to make everything green, where I was making their operations so painful and difficult, but we soldiered on and luckily had one of the co-founders as the champion. And so change management of the team, that was a big behavioral shift. And then of course the 20,000 guests, we decided to commit to a plastic-free festival. Because I just think it's insane how much plastic we have in Singapore still. And so I've decided this is a new target and something I really want to eliminate. And so behavioral change, yes, with the team and with the guests, but further than that, wanted to target industry. So we've launched a Music Climate Action Pledge where we're actually getting live music events to commit to plastic-free parties across Singapore. And we're partnering with a global foundation for that, Bye Bye Plastic. And so my big aim is within the next couple of years to, of course, completely eradicate single-use plastic from live music events in Singapore, speak to Stadium, get them to remove, because I had friends recently that went to Lady Gaga, got their wine in their single-use plastic cups, took them back for refills. No, sorry, not allowed. You need new glasses. So stuff like this, it's crazy to me that this still happens in Singapore with everything we know and the ability that we actually have to foster change. So that's my big mission at the moment for Singapore, and really excited. We had 10 signatories sign up for the pledge. We just had our first meeting this week with them, and so we're going to be eradicating single-use plastic, hopefully in the next couple of years from live music events. So that's one big thing I'm excited about.
Well, wonderful. Changing behavior, changing mindset is really, really difficult. And I think we have some educator in the audience also, and we have one on the panel as well, and also using art, film, and apart from music festival and all that. I think the art, actually performing arts, is something that you can really impress on people, change people's mindset and behavior in a nicer way, right? Not like, you all sit down, this is the regulations, right? So from your teaching experience, are you seeing some change among your students and the younger generation? And since you were at, the Arctic expedition, and what you have picked up from there, and what you have been using your experience to impress on your students?
Yeah, so thanks for the invitation here. And it's been 6 years since our last expedition. And it always comes back to me like how, it all started with Robert just sharing that he saw a film. And so sometimes it just takes one person to be really inspired by a story from a film. It could be from music, it could be from, different arts, to make a change. And that change actually propagated to where we are now. And we are all here listening. So what I have been doing after the Arctic expedition is I've been trying to bring community projects into where I teach LASALLE. And since then, we actually partnered with organizations like Jane Goodall Institute, Singapore, to make animations because I'm an animation filmmaker myself. So we did some projects with Jane Goodall, and my students work with wildlife experts in Singapore, creating animations that are very accessible to young people, especially the kids. And we are just hoping that one day, just a few of them who watch these works will be inspired, and they grow up and they want to do something. And this is like what Barney is doing, just sowing seeds, right? And one day they will grow. So I think the arts play a role in this kind of aspect where slowly we start to see more people wanting to do something, feeling inspired to do something.
Well, certainly you should run a workshop at our EcoTrain downstairs for the kids from 4 years old and above. And just now Barney mentioned a little bit of like the sad fact that ESG bashing is getting, quite widespread in the world. And there was a recent survey showing that the impact of ESG bashing was really rampant in US and Europe. But it seems like it's providing, Asia an opportunity. Only 30% of CEO feel that, no, I will still, support climate action and ESG and all. But there's also saying that don't worry too much about the labeling. Whether it is DEI, whether it is ESG, we can still continue our responsible and sustainable practices. So what is your take on this? And do you see that from where you operate in? Did you really see people are pulling back? Or, do you see that really, affecting, fundings and all?
I think that I live in California because I don't like English weather. It's too cold for me. I've been too cold in my life. But I was, on January the 6th, I was in my little house, which is about the size of this, and I could smell the fires 300 miles away from Los Angeles, which was burning. And I received that morning a letter telling me that I couldn't insure my house anymore because of fire. And I was thinking, is it not extraordinary that half of the voting population of the United States have just voted in a president and a whole group of people that not one mention of sustainability was part of that. So actually, rather than being annoyed, I felt to a certain extent that I'd failed because I'd never engaged those people properly. And I think part of moving things forward is, yes, it's disappointing. Yes, people are being pushed back, especially in America. So many companies are using this as an excuse to pull back on commitments made. But I think that possibly more importantly to me is that we all should try, especially in Europe, in the United States, to engage those people that we've never engaged properly before on this. And I think that's an important thing for the simple reason that if we don't, then this pattern will just continue. So when Mr. Trump is out, Mr. Vance will be in. Same stuff. So I think it's really important that all of us are aware, and it's great to be in Singapore where perhaps things haven't been pushed back as much. But I think it's important that it doesn't matter where we are, that we must engage the people we've never engaged enough before. And I think that's my take on it.
Barney?
A very important question, Esther, so thank you. And I think that maybe the labels don't need to be changed, but how we make things relatable. Most of the farmers around our property are very conservative, some of them, many different issues. But if you can relate on a family perspective and be like, do you like clean air? Do you like food that doesn't make you sick? Do you like going to the beach and it's covered in rubbish? I think that being able to relate it back to things that surely people don't like rubbish-coated beaches, and they want water that isn't poisoned, and they want food that isn't so covered in pesticides, you need to wash your apple or you get sick. So instead of talking about agricultural transitions and ESG and TCNFD and transitional plans and sectorial pathways, which definitely gives me grief that I sometimes use too many of these buzzwords often. How do we bring it back to a family, a human perspective, and realizing the fact that many of us got in a grab today that was not electric. And so within that, how do we also absorb our own hypocrisy and realize that the industrialists, the oil, the plastic, they're there for a reason because we keep consuming. And I'm not saying that we all are the reason for that. We need them to shift. But if you're talking to Larry Fink or whoever it is, some big top person, and they're not believing in what you're saying, bringing it back to that family, that relatability and provisions instead of a 30, 40-year NDC climate commitment, which in their mind is like, I'm going to be dead, I don't care, often, because many of these folks are older. And so bringing that long-term narrative into something that's palatable and that can actually change in the next 2 years. And within Trump's administration, he cares about real estate, he cares about golf courses. You want to have a good-looking real estate and a good-looking golf course, that is regeneration. But he doesn't think of it like that because it increases his asset value. So I think there's just a shift, and I think the labels can say the same, but the context is important to shift right now, just to make things relevant and inclusive.
Yeah, certainly. And actually, we are living in a region that we see actually quite a lot of actions going on. And even this year, you know, in the ASEAN regions, a lot of activities. And we have this humble space. We opened in 2017. And this 45,000 people walk through this door to attend function like this, event and courses. And we also believe in partnership. If you see that one is actually our partner, NGO partner is Global Compact Network Singapore. We promote, you know, sustainable development. And behind this curtain is actually our very, you know, first partner when we opened the academy. It's called Sustainable Energy Association. So we are talking about decarbonization, renewable energy. So they are our good partner. And 1,300 over events were held here over the past few years. Even with COVID, we closed for about 18 months. And now our booking is really all the way to the end of the year, and you know, so this is rent-free, and we really want to build a community. With conversation, then you have awareness. With awareness, then you can drive action. So now I want to also going back to Steph, and she has a lot of activities. And in your interaction with a lot of corporates, yeah, how do you witness certain change or pullback in the way they support, you know, sustainability?
Yeah, I think all the conversations I'm having with a lot of my friends who are working in sustainability, they're really struggling to get budget. Sustainability teams have been cut. Like, you are hearing a lot of stories like this, especially in the US. And climate's now a dirty word over there. But that I think what I'm also seeing at the same time is that it's actually really galvanizing the people that care. So, and it's exactly what you were saying, you know, they're not really, it doesn't really matter about the labels anymore. The work still matters, and the work is still investable, and the work is still making money, you know, especially like these massive projects, renewable energy projects. There's still huge investment pouring into these in the US. And so these stories, when you hear them, I think it's really encouraging. I also heard, you know, recently a regenerative VC fund just got like a huge amount of money invested, so they're going to do incredible work too. So you do hear the people that really understand what's going on, like from a high level, they're not changing where they're putting their money, and the people are still fighting harder than ever and pursuing with the goals. They're just maybe doing it a bit quieter, potentially, and more behind the scenes. And I think this is a big thing that I really am seeing a lot, as well as that we just need to bake sustainability into the experiences, into everything. And it doesn't necessarily need to be obvious. It can be quiet, but it just has to happen. And so I think that's one piece that I think is really important in this conversation. And the other is like, I just get frustrated when I think about the fact that how is it not cool yet to care? Like, why are we still having to try and come up with innovative ways to actually make this conversation something that Gen Z want to be part of? I heard a lot of climate fatigue, and they're tired, and they're going back to consumerist habits, and they're blaming older generations but not doing anything. I mean, there's so many things like this I keep hearing at the moment. So I still think, what can we do to make it cool? And that's why I'm really playing with music right now to figure out, like, what if we work with like Asian K-pop artists and music artists and stuff, like, can we get them to care and get all their fans to care? And there are movements already like K-pop for the planet and stuff that are kind of piloting this, but I think we need to get way more creative about how we bring this dialogue to people. So yeah, my 2 main points is baking it into the experience, not caring about what's happening on a political level because there's so much good still happening, and then really just trying to get creative about how we can make this happen. Yeah.
Yes, QS, what is your take when you interact with your students? Do you see a lot of enthusiasm or resistance, or do you see any change at all that also using your art form, whatever art forms that you are teaching or, LaSalle is promoting, are they changing, behavior?
I think when just now when Barney was mentioning Robert and as well AI, my students, okay, they are artists, and actually they are quite against AI when it first come out, and quite a number of them are actually cares about AI because it actually uses a lot of energy, and they do care. It's just how do they then link with what they want to do and so on. So we do have the young generation who really wants to care, and like Steph just mentioned, we really have to get more creative. So I would see the role of arts institutions like LaSalle trying to nurture young people to be able to think better. How do they, in what they want to pursue, factor in sustainability, and also I think nowadays the big word is also mental wellness as well, because it's directly linked to sustainability. And our students, they really care about that. And how do they then use all this with the craft and with the ideas, the creativity that they have, build something together with the communities. So I think that's maybe one area that is very important. And at LaSalle, there's also a new course. It's called the Masters in Arts and Ecology. And yeah, these are new areas of growth, and I see these as opportunities to give back to climate action. Yeah.
Indeed. In the meantime, can I have the first question? Very hard to get this panel together. Anyone? First question? Yeah. Oh, Steph, your daddy is going to ask questions.
Hi there, guys. Fascinating listening to you again. I've had a bit of a gap over the last few years since I moved back to Sydney, and miss listening to Stephanie and the panel speaking. A couple of questions, Robert. Since the COVID years, just very briefly, where is global understanding and growth of sustainability? Just briefly.
I think, as Steph says, underneath it's going really well. I think that there's a lot of excuses, especially in the United States and in Europe, about saying, well, maybe our investments that we were going to do, we won't do now. But I think you're right, that underneath it all, the people who really know what they're talking about and are committed are just getting on with it.
Mm.
So I think that it has taken a step back, there's no question. But I think that what we're all about, you included, everybody in this room, is to step it forward. And I think that's where I would say it was at.
Mm-hmm.
It's there, it has taken a hit, no question, but we can move it forward. And I think the more that it's seen, as Barney says, as a business opportunity as well, I think people, I think it's gone too far to back off. That's my view.
Yeah, indeed. And Barney, a rather personal question. Did your toe grow back?
Well, I'm not a lizard, so only a bit of it fell off. And just on it does get cold still, even in Marina Bay Sands, 17-degree air conditioning, if I'm wearing flip-flops. But on your previous question, I think my girlfriend is a doctor. Healthcare is apolitical. It doesn't matter who, the donkey or the elephant is in charge. It's not like you're going to just shut the hospital. And how does resilience, future-proofing our biological mothership, which is Earth, become an apolitical, bipartisan momentum? I think that's what I don't see since COVID. It's been used as a political weapon, and I think the really big opportunity is how do we transcend that and actually create and I know there were some people in unions here, or whether it's industry or government or private public sector, VC groups, whatever it is, how does it not shift with who's in charge? I think that that's a really big next step I'd like to see, because it is not a political option. My girlfriend doesn't just stop when someone changes from Labour to Liberal, and then we really need that momentum with future-proofing our planet, and it not to be this political thing.
Thank you, guys. That's great.
Thank you for the question. Any other question? Okay.
So, Robert, you mentioned about engaging populations that are not engaged.
Yeah.
What about populations like maybe what we can look at, even the younger population, the Gen Alphas, the Gen Betas, and maybe for Esther, a consideration is maybe the E-Generation could be even younger rather than the
17 to 25, 35.
Yeah,
is
maybe a 17.
We
maybe
have
younger
other
than 17.
events that
Yeah.
is for children downstairs, 4 years old and above.
Correct.
So we cover all age. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it has to be. And I think that inspiration, you know, as you've correctly said very kindly, inspiration started for me at 11. And I never let go. So I think hope is a good word. But don't think that hope is a plan. But hope with a plan is pretty good stuff. So I think getting hope with a plan, especially to young people, that they feel, as you do so well, that they can be part of all of this. I think that's a really crucial part. But I will say one thing, that a lot of people who aren't engaged in all of this, and I'm not talking about children, I'm talking about your average everyday person that's making a living, creating a family, looking after everybody. I think a lot of people were made to feel that they were doing something wrong by not being green, that they were somehow looked down on, especially in America. And that created a huge division amongst people, thinking, well, all these environmental people, they've all got a lot of money, they've got time to talk about all these things, and they're looking down on us as being not doing the right thing. And I think that created a real sense of division, and I think a real sense of being angry, that who the hell are these people to tell us to suddenly turn green and have an electric car and do all these things that we can't afford. So I think there's an area there that I think we all have to take that on board and say, how can we overcome that? Because making divisions isn't the way forward, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, certainly. Barney, just a quick question about at what age that you decided that you become a champion yourself. How does following your dad's footsteps? Not everyone is so fortunate that have a climate hero as the father. So, so was it given you, the pressure or the inspiration? And well, we have a lot of parents here. We also want to influence our children or grandchildren and all.
Well, can I just say something quickly before you answer, Barney? Is that my mum gave me some very good advice, and she said, Rob, do not push Barney to be what you think he should be. Let him decide. Barney, little dip.
We can take one last question, so be prepared. A tough question, please. Okay, Barney, sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's all very relaxed. I think when it comes to, people use the word legacy a lot, and I think when I'm grandma's age, hopefully, if I don't fall off a cliff or do something stupid, she died at 106. When she was born, there was 1.7 billion people on the planet, and when she died, there was 7.9 billion, and now we're on 8.1. You can talk about parts per million, you can talk about all of these other indexes and blah, blah, blah. Just that alone is a terrifying reality. And within that, if I get to 106, and I've never viewed Dad or my mum, who's a horticulturalist and a consultant, as anything but mum and dad, but I think what really pushed me on is that I'm very uncomfortable often running a charity. We have no money, it's stressful. I could be a consultant, live a comfortable life, but what happened, and there's many amazing consultants in the room, not saying anything against consultants, but me personally, if I get to 106 and I'm on the little rocking chair looking out on the trees and whatever, eating a durian, which I had to get it in at least once, Dad. That gives me grief. I talk about durian too much. We're growing 180 durian trees, so love durian and mangosteen and all the tropical wonders. Okay. But if I get to 106, what do I want to feel good about? And fresh water, clean air, happy people, jobs, security, and safe places, that's what I would like to leave. So I think that reality of thinking ahead and working back has defined why I've spent the last 6 years struggling in the mud.
Well, you're doing good work. When you look back, you can feel proud of the legacy and the Daintree Forest. Any other last question? Oh, okay. Hi, Faye. Yeah.
Thank you so much for a wonderful and inspiring session. This is a question for all of the panelists. The problem with being a pioneer is that you don't have the comforts of the flock. You don't have people constantly telling you that you're on the right track. So my question is, how do you keep yourself rooted and unwavering in your faith, in human nature, in the course that you're on?
To go first? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rob. Don't give me any time to think about it. It's an excellent question. I think that I would be very bored if I wasn't trying to make something happen out of nothing. I mean, I think you kind of just, like when I quit my job in fashion to try and be part of a solution instead of a problem and battled my way through, I'm doing the same thing all over again now, having left it after 10 years in a different, in a different part. So I think, I just think that there's something about it that's really fun, and I got bored being where I was because there was lots of other people doing it, and I was like, they can do it now, I don't need to be here anymore. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but I just feel, for me, it's more exciting and interesting, and I like to be able to push things and be more creative and, yeah, try to make change in ways that hasn't happened that I've seen.
How about you, QS?
I wouldn't say I'm pioneering anything, but whenever I work with Esther, even on the videos, I'm just very fortunate that I'm surrounded by a lot of good people, and they supply me with a lot of help. Even on this expedition, there's so much that I learned from every single one of them. So if there's no one in front of you, just look to the side, and there are a lot of good people. Yeah.
Great. Barney, you first, then your father will have the last word.
Awesome question, V. And I think for me, there's a fine line between pushing hard to make yourself sick, which I burnt myself out last month, just around my birthday, and the other side of me going to Bali and doing a lot of breath work. Love breath work, nothing against breath work, but there's two sides of the option. You work 15, 16, 17-hour days, and you do a lot of integration with the earth, whatever you want to do it. Like, I'd like to be over here, I'd like to surf, I'd like to climb, I'd like to be in the forest, I'd like to tap into my breath and eat organic food and live a very chill life. But then over here is burnt out Barney who's cooked with no money, and that when it comes to that reference, it's trying to straddle between the both, and at the end of the day, not so much that future self stuff, but that at the end of the day, am I proud not to have let opportunity go through my fingers like an hourglass, and on the other side gripped it so hard that you turned it into glass. So I think it's trying to find between the sand and turning it to glass, and checking in with yourself each day if you've served yourself within that, because there's a lot of very powerful, very go-get-it people, but if you're burnt out, you're crispy, then you're not serving yourself. And that if we deal with how we regulate ourselves better, it will go out. And I know I'm waffling too much, but the best question I've ever been asked on stage, by a Singapore student, I've done a lot of engagements with schools here. Thank you, Esther, for making some of those a reality. Best question, which kind of ties into the hourglass versus the glass. the sand versus the glass, is what's the parallel between circular economy and self-realization? If we think about that more, I think not constantly looking for external gratification, it's a bit like not going to more petrochemicals. We have so many circular alternatives, it's cheaper and easier to go to petrochemicals. And same with fulfilling ourselves and not being unhappy and not being overwhelmed with being these little gooey little things in a very hard world. How do we regulate straddling between those worlds? And I love that question from a 16-year-old public school student. Very, very important question that I encourage us all to ask in our own time.
Thank you, Robert.
Well, I have to say that seeing you two, who came with us to the Arctic in 2019, it really makes me proud of what we've done, to see what you've done anyhow, but also with the story of having come on the expedition. So well done you. But let's go back to the great Antarctic ice cap, Fee, and imagine how isolated you feel, literally hanging off the bottom of the world in an area twice the size of Australia, and you're the only people there, and you don't have a radio. Can't call up mummy on your iPhone 17. That's pretty serious isolation. And what I used to think about a lot when we were there is how isolated we are, the world. Barney and I have worked with NASA. They say to us, look, there's no one out there for a really, really long way. So we are isolated on this planet, and I think what keeps me going when Barney's now facing it is on year 6. I've been on this for 40 years of being up against the odds all the time. No money, no this and that, and a real struggle, and no one cares, and no one's really listening. But what keeps me going is that idea that we really have to try. Simple as that, because there's nowhere else to go. And, that's it for me. And also seeing what you're doing, Barney, is, a huge inspiration to me, because you've done this on your own. I've tried to support Barney as best I can. Good luck, young man. Carry on. It looks like the right thing to do to me. Haven't got any money to give him, but seeing what you've done has inspired me. And Esther An, what you've done, year after year, day after day, project after project, I think we should all salute you at the end of this panel and say well done to you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, I'm not alone doing this, but when we talk about founder and startup, we always say, oh, not the corporate people. Actually, in corporate life, we also need to be raising fund. But one more thing to do is you also need to make it a business case that how incorporating sustainability can really help to bring back some business value, especially today's environment that the economy is not that great. But I'm really thankful for CDL, for my past and the current management. For 30 years, they've been supporting my dreams, and of course to my team, they're all very tireless people, passionate people. Last night we were here until almost 8:30, and on new subjects. Although we've been doing this for so many years, and there are still subjects that is less talked about. So do you know that actually heat is the deadliest killer of people among all climate challenges, climate threats and all that? Every year it kills about 489,000 people, more than the combination of flood, drought, and wildfire. So this is a subject that we are actually creating conversation. This platform is to create awareness for issues that are less talked about. So we have 3 professors last night to talk about heat, health, and harmony with nature, how we tap to nature for solutions. And Singapore is 1.5 degrees north of the equator, and we feel the heat all the time. So, but because we are very fortunate in Singapore, we can afford air condition, fan, and all that, but it doesn't mean that that's the solution. So we need to look at new issues, bring people who care and who people who knows. And if you have time, actually we have 30 kids waiting to see the 2 heroes downstairs. The 4 or 5 years old have been, with MJ doing workshop until, that's why I'm so sorry that I have to, put in, close to this panel. We can go on forever. These 2 heroes, I can, talk to them for 12 hours nonstop. But for the kids, I need to bring you downstairs, and or whoever is interested to join us, and we need to take a group photo first before I let them go. And we have actually a microforest downstairs. It is a nature-based solutions that we are piloting. It's a living lab that we can actually cool urban spaces through greening, not just about technology, but we can go for nature-based solution. Singapore aspires to be a city in nature. That is how we can cool and make Singapore more livable. Thank you so much for your time and spending the Friday afternoon with us. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we'll take a group photo together.
Yeah, we'll take another photo with the audience. So they're gonna take one against the screen first. But can we have you push towards the middle so there's no gap? Thank you. Okay, we'll take one with the audience now. Can we have you squish and fill up the gap in the middle, please? Thank you, everyone. And before we go off, we have a very short video on the E-Generation Challenge created by our very own Qing Sheng. So please, please enjoy.
Hi, my name is MJ, also known as Biogirl MJ, and I'm the co-founder of Just Keep Thinking.
My name is Tiyun, and I'm the founder and science communicator behind The Weird and Wild.
I'm Daryl, and I'm an illustrator and educator.
I'm Nithya Laila, a culinary anthropologist.
My name is Sean, and I'm currently a graduate student studying geoinformation sciences.
My name is Qing Sheng. I'm a filmmaker and a lecturer at LASALLE, University of the Arts, Singapore.
Hi everyone, my name is Sam from Sustainable.
My name is Anna Oposa, and I am the Executive Director and Chief Mermaid of a marine conservation organization called Save Philippine Seas.
I had the incredible opportunity to travel to the land of the penguins, Antarctica. I had this once-in-a-lifetime experience traveling with the legendary oceanographer, Dr. Silver Earl.
I went to Bali in 2022 for my CDL E-Generation expedition.
I went to Tanzania with Daryl and Nithya.
To the Jane Goodall Institute
To spend some time with Dr. Jane Goodall and see her Roots and Shoots initiative in action.
Trip to the Arctic with world-renowned explorer Robert Swan.
I had the opportunity to go to Bali.
I went to Raja Ampat.
Awakening. Seeing the raw beauty of Antarctica while also witnessing the harsh impacts of climate change firsthand was both eye-opening and rather humbling.
Invigorating, seeing how everyone comes together to bring about change.
It was an enlightening, eye-opening experience. We saw that beyond just wildlife conservation, it's also very much about the people and the communities that live around wild spaces.
Connection, understanding and seeing the principles behind the projects that we had the chance to visit in Tanzania, me to see in practice what I was kind of learning in theory in Singapore in many ways.
Awestruck experience. I was captivated by what was at stake for the environment and definitely inspired to do something.
Inspiring. It was a really eye-opening experience. We really got to see in depth on how communities work.
Life-changing.
The experience has pushed me to grow as a storyteller, learning how to communicate across cultures and with people who might not speak the same language or share the same priorities as us. It taught me how to craft stories, enrich perspectives, and also inspire action.
My expedition has allowed me to deepen my curiosity of sustainability issues from all around the world.
It showed me that conservation, caring for your environment begins right at home. It can always start small and grow really, really big. And it's led actually to my current project, connecting food and conservation. And it really began just watching Jane Goodall have her lunch in Tanzania.
All these perspectives gave me a richer understanding of environmental education and helped me become more effective in my advocacy work since.
I have forged networks and friendships with like-minded individuals who want to do something about the environment as well.
It made me think about how collaboration and partnerships is really what drives impact and how important it is even if we don't see the results right away.
It was just such a great experience that gave me a new network of friends and colleagues to collaborate with for the rest of my life.
To all the passionate young change makers out there, it's more than just a competition. It's a transformative journey that will challenge you, inspire you, and help you go in ways that you never imagined.
And if you're even thinking about it, I highly encourage you to sign up.
Just do it. It's going to be a wonderful experience.
I encourage any and every youth to apply for this challenge.
It'll be a great way to see how capacity building is done in its best practices, and as well, it'll give you great ideas on how to move forward with your sustainability initiative or project.
Just do it because you don't know what kind of opportunities it can bring you.
Join the CDL E-Generation Challenge.
Then all the best.
All the best.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Robert and Barney will now make their way down to the EcoTrain with Esther to meet MJ and the kids and also take part in the tree planting. For interested guests, you may also feel free to join, but for those who want to stay, just enjoy the refreshments and mingle around. Yeah, thank you.